Hello, Able God. Hello, Tosin Busola. Thank you guys for joining today. I'm just trying to set it up and then we'll get started, okay? Thank you. In business with Dr. Anino. One second, please. And first. Hello, relationship with Abilite. How are you doing today? By the way, you can see I'm not wearing black today because in the last video, you pointed out that I'm always wearing black. And just because of you, because of my love for you, Abilite, I decided to wear red. I don't know what color this is. Yeah, but just because of you. Anyways, guys, so thank you guys again for joining on another session. We're going to be chatting with the amazing, the awesome Dr. Anino Ewuwa today. We're going to be talking more about women in entrepreneurship and business and in leadership positions as well. That's kind of like the theme we're going for today. But otherwise, we're also going to be talking about her inspiring stories and different things. This woman is just really spectacular. She is one of a kind. I remembered going through her profile and really just trying to learn more about her, and I'm like, wow, like I was blown away. Like I tend to meet a lot of inspirational people like on a regular basis, but her profile is just totally amazing. She's doing so much for women all over the world, not just in Nigeria, not just in Africa, but everywhere in the world. But I'm going to try not to give it away because she's going to be joining us pretty soon. But while we wait for her, though, let's connect a little bit. How are you guys doing? What's been good with you guys? How are you guys looking forward to the relief of the end of this lockdown in your different countries? I hear that Nigeria is going to be opened May 4th. Am I correct? May 4th. In Paris, in France, it's going to be May 11th, although we've not gotten the final, confirmation on that yet. I hear that in Ireland, it's going to be May 12th. Wherever you're joining in from, when is your lockdown going to be over, and how are you guys preparing for it? Personally, for me, I am excited, but I'm also kind of scared. It's like we're all going back out, and we don't even know what's going to happen with this virus. Is it going to be safe again, or how's it going to be just being pushed back into the population again? With all that, Abilai, thank you very much for joining us. You can see again, just because of you, all for you, I'm wearing the red shirt, just so you know. It's how much I love you, how much I value you on this show. Thank you. Abilai says, hello, beautiful. Hello, beautiful too. Hello, beautiful you. Anyway, so we're waiting for Dr. Anino to join us, like I was saying. But while we're waiting, I'm still talking about like getting ready for the lockdown to be over. Because honestly, for me, it's like, I really hope that this vaccine that everyone is working on, gets settled ASAP, like as soon as possible. I hope that it gets out there because people are still, being affected, and we still have some deaths in different parts of the world, and it just needs to stop. And other news as well, in India, Irfan Khan actually died this week. Rishi Kapoor as well died, and that is really sad. I needed to talk about that because these are two people that have contributed to cinema across the world, and it's just really sad that that happened. But anyways, right now Dr. Ewuwa has joined us. Dr. Anino Ewuwa has joined us, and I'm going to be connecting with her straight away. Let's get started. Hello.
Hi, how are you? Hi, everybody.
Oh my God. Hi, how are you? You're looking amazing. I'm just
Thank
excited to
you.
see you. I'm excited to finally talk to you, honestly, because I do, again, I was saying before you joined, I do meet a lot of inspirational people. I do meet a lot of exceptional people. Oh, sorry about that. I think my video paused for a second. But honestly, I read your profile and I'm just really blown away by what you do for women every day. Well, not just for women, also in the financial space, the different things you've done. I don't want to to talk too much about it because I want you to kind of be in charge of that story, but thank you. Okay. So I'm just going to go straight to it because I know we don't have a lot of time. I have so many questions for you. I'm just going to go straight to it. So first of all, who is Dr. Anino Ewuwa and what does she do?
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me on your show today. I think I actually watched a few days ago. It was a fantastic session you had. Okay, so my name is Anino Ewuwa. I am from Nigeria. I am the founder and managing director of Avondis Consulting in France. And we have an office in Lagos. By the way, just a sound check. Can you hear me properly? Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I can hear you really good.
Okay, lovely. And my consulting company, we work on strategy and financial advisory, working with entrepreneurs and business leaders. We also work a lot with women. We build communities of women internationally and also in Nigeria. We have communities for women CEOs, women who are entrepreneurs, and because we believe in having women in leadership. And so we have our events, all over the place. We've had one event in Paris. We have them, at also where you have key decision makers appearing. So, for example, at Davos, we've also had an event at UNGA last year, and essentially anything that has to do with women working, we're there. We'd love to support women. I'm actually a coach for many and mentor for many international organizations for Cartier Women's Initiative, now with also Cambridge Judge University, with the Chartered Management Institute, and I'm also an alumni fellow at Nottingham Business School, and I mentor students in the business school there as well.
Wow. Oh, are you sure? I know there's more. So I'm just like, I'm pretend. I like how you're summarizing it and you're like downplaying it. Guys, she's also an international public speaker. Okay, I mean, you're so and I like how you're just saying it, like Cartier's Women Initiative. You do the women at Davos. You do the women African CEO thing as well. Like just so many different things, and I'm just like, this is one life. One person does this much. Okay, cool, really amazing. But really lovely to meet you again, and thank you for kind of like putting it in a very simple way what you do. And also about Avondis Consulting. I hope I pronounced that right.
That's right. Yes.
Really, really amazing work you guys do as well. I remember I saw somewhere that you did a program earlier this year in January of 2020 for women as well, and really, really interesting stuff. I wasn't there, of course, but I kind of saw some information about that. That's really interesting what you guys do. So my second question, which is, I know you do a lot. Kind of a summary of your background, like when did you decide this was the path? Was this kind of like something you knew since you were a child? How did you get to this point? Kind of a summary of that, if you don't mind.
Okay, a brief summary. It was actually, I'd say it was a journey. When I was very young, at the age of 16, I knew that I wanted to go into banking. There wasn't anybody who had gone into banking, but for some reason, I was interested in banking. I'd done very well in mathematics, and I thought this is fantastic because I'll get to learn how finance runs big businesses. So I was fascinated with this, and so I did my A levels. I chose economics and mathematics. I went into university to study economics, monetary economics. As a preparation to go into banking, I wanted to be an investment banker, a corporate banker. I knew all of that. For some reason, I can't explain to you, except that I just felt that it was fascinating that finance drove business, and yet finance is not something you can see. We hear about it, but we can't actually touch it. So there was this fascination with that. And so I started out my career working in banking, corporate banking in Nigeria with Citibank. And I had a portfolio. I was very young. I was 23. I had a portfolio of large multinational companies, and I would write credit requests, loan requests of millions of dollars for these businesses, and the bank would make from these businesses millions of dollars as well. But here I was back in Africa dealing with large businesses, and when I would come out of that workspace, which I loved and adored, I would see gaps in the market, that is to say entrepreneurial gaps. There are lots of things that we didn't have, that didn't exist. And I studied at the LSE economics, and we have a strong history of development, of social development. And I could see that sort of, difference between big businesses and smaller businesses, which we needed to develop. And I had the opportunity to live with my family in several countries in Africa, and I could see the same picture in terms of smaller businesses and their lack of access to funds. Because I had been, on the bank's credit committee, I had signed off credits, but you could see that it was difficult for smaller businesses to raise funds. And so I started off first, by advising them and helping them. But I felt that there was more to this, that, if you see the same picture country after country, then it looked as if, private sector was being hampered in terms of the growth, in driving businesses. And I had done quite a lot of work in entrepreneurship when I studied my MBA, in learning about entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship, had changed the economies of several countries like America, and in the days of Thatcher, the Thatcher days, etc., and increasingly in Europe. And so there was this understanding that entrepreneurship was going to drive change, and yet smaller businesses were finding it difficult. So that began my incursion into entrepreneurship and smaller businesses, and understanding that whole process. And as I said, with a background in economics and wanting to understand things on a sort of a larger level, I decided to do a doctorate studying finance on entrepreneurship, and how we could overcome the obstacles. And from there, I launched my consulting business. So of course I was working with people leading businesses, and specifically of course with women, because women have even more difficulty raising funds. We know the figures. If we look at venture capital that drives businesses that scale up worldwide, women still account for only less than 3% of funding goes to women-led firms. So there's a huge gap. So clearly, I had an interest in that sector, but also in the corporate world as well. The figures are similar in terms of corporate businesses across Africa, the biggest businesses in the US, UK, and many countries. We only have less than 5%, or about 5% of CEOs are women. So there are huge gaps in leadership, whether it's in entrepreneurship or it's in corporate world. There are huge gaps. So I think those reasons, those were my reasons for entering into that space.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So you saw a problem. First of all, you saw a problem. First of all, you called it a journey. That's something I took there. It's like,
yes,
the further you went into it, the more you realized there was a problem, you're solving it. I'm going to call you the official, guys, she's the official problem solver, because it's like everything you decided to do was because there was a problem and there was something that needed to be taken care of. For example, you talked about the SMEs in Nigeria. The Nigerian economy is actually really run by SMEs. I remember a couple of years ago, I was in a, oh, so sorry, you were saying something?
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you, absolutely agreeing with you.
Yeah, so it's heavily supported by the SMEs. And I was in a meeting, and I was surprised to hear that apparently we have up to 600 million SMEs in Nigeria. Some are not functional, but apparently 600 million SMEs. And many of these people do not have access to funds. And now you're letting me know that out of these funds that are even available, just 3% goes to women-led businesses. And that is just a shame. And that just really is eye-opening for me. And then you see this, and then you're going to go ahead and go to do your doctorate in Nottingham. You did it in Nottingham, right?
That's right, yes. Nottingham, Trent.
Nottingham. Yes. And I also know you did an MBA at Cranfield as well.
That's right.
So, yeah. Oh, so sorry. This is like, basically, I'm a stalker, is what you need to know.
So, you've done your research. Perfect.
Yeah, why not? Because I mean, you're a really fascinating person. So, of course, there's a lot to see, a lot to research. So I'm just saying that you did everything because you saw that there was a need, and then you pursued something. So it's truly, truly inspiring there. And I think this sort of answered my next question, which is what motivates you and what inspires you? And what is your mission, professionally, socially, what is your mission, and what inspires you and motivates you?
I think the bigger picture, what motivates me is development, right? And development, especially in Africa, on the continent, because I really don't see that we don't have all that it takes for us to develop, okay? But it's a big problem, it's not a problem that one person or 10 people are going to solve. And so you find out, where in that space can you operate? And the space I've chosen to operate is in terms of leadership, especially of smaller businesses and entrepreneurship, and in particular, women-led businesses, because that I feel is an opportunity for us. As the continent continues to grow and develop, we will have approximately 300 million young people by the end of the decade in 2030, and we need to create jobs for them. And we have all that it takes, but we need to be able to harness all our all that we have, and all our potential, and create something out of it. And so I am working in a particular space, and I develop, and I derive a lot of satisfaction, especially when I see businesses grow. Even though I have a focus, on communities of women-led businesses, but I work with all businesses. I have many male clients, and they are very happy to see what I'm doing, specifically for women, and so it's just that drive to grow private sector. I totally and absolutely believe that is private sector development that is going to cause the development of any nation. It's a historical fact. Okay, we work together with government. Government provides the infrastructure or the environment, working hand in hand. But in terms of economic development and growth, it has to be. You have to have businesses that are able to grow. So I think that is really what drives me. But then, I love working with people as well. And when you see a business or somebody that has perhaps have challenges, it's always difficult. And, you've worked with them and you see the businesses thriving and you see them developing. That gives me a lot of satisfaction, really.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So from what I picked up there is one, the development of the continent, because that is important. You also talked about leadership in business, especially for women.
Yes.
As well. Okay. As well. I'm sorry. I'm just getting a particular message as well. Please, do you mind if you put is it possible to adjust your camera a little bit so we can see your face completely?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. This was one of the comments as well, so I'm so sorry.
Glad to say so. Okay.
Yeah, I was good with it. Thank you guys for always, letting me know what's going on. So talking about you just focusing on leadership in business and women, especially women-led businesses as well, is a good reason. And also people, because people are the best resource, always will be the best resource. Just quickly before I go to my next question, everyone here is saying so many beautiful things. Adelaide says, beautiful woman. Moses Amara says she's amazing. Yes, she is. You are amazing.
Moses.
You are very amazing. Adelaide also says she is in-depth. Yes, you are. I mean, guys, have you been with me for the past 19 minutes? Okay.
I'm blushing, guys. I'm blushing. You can't see, but I am.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you guys for commenting. By the way, please, if you have any questions at all, you want to be part of the conversation, please ask. Okay. Be sure to ask, and I'll find a way to put it in this conversation as well. So now I'm gonna want to go into kind of like the main reason why we're here. We said the focus of today's conversation is going to be about women in entrepreneurship and leadership positions, kind of like that whole conversation itself. And earlier on when you were talking about your background, you mentioned education. You talked about, we've kind of talked about your the studies you had to do. So you saw a problem, you went to school for it, right? And recently I was doing research and I found that UNICEF states that in northern Nigeria, not even just the whole of Nigeria, because I've been focusing on the education of the girl child, and we realized that in northern Nigeria, we have less than half, that's about 47.5% of net attendance for the girl child. And that's not even to talk about states where, there's heavy terrorism like Borno, they've been terrorized by herdsmen, where women cannot, or where girls definitely will not go to school or have access to education. And you yourself being someone that is well educated, who has gotten access to education, what do you believe is the role of education in fostering women in business? Because now these girls that have no access to education, it seems like they may not be able to particularly get that space in business as well, or successfully get that space in business. So what do you believe is the role of education in that? And how do you think we can solve this problem that we have, not just in northern Nigeria, but all of Nigeria and Africa as well?
Okay. First of all, the UN talks about, when it talks about basic rights. Education, is a basic right up to a certain stage. And therefore, I find it particularly painful in my country or anywhere else where anybody, any group does not have access to basic education, and in particular, girls, in certain areas. So that is particularly painful. Now, I will just say very briefly, when we had the case of the Chibok girls, and I set up a group which was called Women. I think it was several years ago when I set it up. It wasn't a private school, it was a state school, and you were there on merit. And we had friends from, classmates from every state. It was a fantastic experience, and we still are a group right now. And many of the women, obviously from Queen's College, you would know about, are in certain positions. And the point of my group was to say that, we are who we are because we're defined by education. Because we had women from different backgrounds. It wasn't because your background was privileged. It was because you had the ability to be in that school. I actually had my scholarship. I had a scholarship paid for by the government all the way through when I was in Queen's College. I didn't ask for it. We didn't apply for it. It was given. So it was basically by merit, okay? And therefore, where we are, I strongly believe that, was related to that access to education. And therefore, education is a motor. It's a motor that propels, that gives opportunities. And without that, it becomes very difficult. All the research is there that education is one of the most important motors to development. And so it's necessary. So to be in a position where we see education is actually a privilege, is actually very hurtful, because I know that is one barrier that we face now, and that is probably another reason why I have acquired quite a lot of education along my way, because I am so aware that people don't. And so when I go and study. Right now, I'm actually studying again. I'm actually at Cambridge doing a Masters of Studies in entrepreneurship. It isn't for me. It is for how I'm going to deploy it, right? When you're sort of young and your parents tell you have to go to school and you need to study, and it's all for you, but it's no longer that. That was decades ago. Now it is, what am I going to use? How am I going to use that and develop that? So, for example, straight after this, in fact, I'll have to leave early. I spoke at a seminar yesterday at Cambridge it was called Enterprise Women. I was a guest speaker. And part of that is a mentorship. So I do have mentorship sessions. So there I am, supposedly a student, but I'm also, speaking and also mentoring. So whatever I learn, I use it in my consulting for entrepreneurs, for leaders. I use it in my speaking engagements. And so I believe in sharing information. So for those who, for any reason, have not had the opportunity, for any reason, they also benefit in some way. So I think that's a key thing. Now, when we're looking, moving to women who have the access to, or people, doesn't matter, women, men, who have access to education, we have to take it. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, and that means so much is changing. And we are in a technologically enhanced age, driven age. And it's no longer technology as a sector. It's technology is it's the basis of a lot of what we do. And we have seen that now in the time of COVID, where we're all trying to move digital. Here we are doing this Instagram Live. You'll be doing it anyway, but even more so because, we were all sort of stuck, at home. So technology is key and is important, and therefore we need to, acquisition is no longer of knowledge, is no longer what you get in four walls, right? We need to upgrade, we need to reskill. If you're leading an institution, you need to upgrade and reskill your staff, but also ourselves. There's a lot that's out there in programs like Coursera, there's so many programs out there. And we need to, make sure that we're always acquiring new skills and new knowledge constantly. I remember when I finished my first degree, and we had a classmate who went off straight to do his master's, and I thought, he's brave, and then I find myself doing a master's, many years later. But after he did his master's, he went to do a PhD, and I was like, oh my goodness, how could he, And many years later, I find myself doing the same thing. But that's formal education. But the point is that things are really changing, and we need to acquire knowledge and skills as quickly as possible. Not just education, but actually knowledge and skills as quickly as possible.
And wherever we can as well.
Wherever we can.
Because you did mention formal education, there's also the informal part as well, where you might get some street smarts that might as well be useful. So any sort of education is also really great. And something I would take from that, what I really appreciate from what you said, is education is no longer for me. It's for how I will deploy it. And I feel like people need to start, there needs to be a shift from, oh, I'm doing this just so that I can say I have a BSc or have a doctorate,
That's right.
to I'm doing this because I want to make an impact, or I want to use it for something that would help others. So yes, guys, I think that's one thing I'm going to take from, something I personally am going to take from that.
Okay.
My second question to you is, I know that if we're having this conversation 5 years ago,
yes,
it would have been a different question. Yeah, there was, the place of women in leadership for business is not as, it's not, I'm not saying we're there yet. We're not where we should be yet at all. Yes. But I think that we're moving towards a kind of positive part of the curve. We're moving forward. Absolutely. And so the question I'm going to ask now is, what do you think that organizations can start doing now, like the venture capitalists, for example, or different people, and governments and institutions can start doing to even shift that positive further and push it further for more gender diversity in business today?
Okay, that really is an excellent question, because when you look at gender diversity in leadership, it's very often looked at as one thing you do, but it's actually a series of very many different things. And I think broadly we can talk about it in three areas: one in terms of government, one in terms of organization, government policy. There's certainly when government works very closely with business, it does help. Now, people will talk about, should you have quotas, etc., at boardroom level? I think it's California or wherever that has a quota in terms of women in on boards. I personally am not really keen on quotas, because sometimes people just want to adhere to particular rule or whatever it is, and the way in which they choose. But it's for people for organizations to understand the value that women bring into it. So it's working in partnership with organizations. If we look at what is happening in the case of Nigeria, which I think is fascinating, we had one of our ex-central bank governors while he was there, His Highness Lamido Sanusi, what he did was, as the central bank governor, he encouraged banks to have a minimum representation of women on boards. Now, this wasn't a rule or regulation, but what they then did, the central bank did, was they monitored. So every year when you reported, with all the reporting requirements, you also reported diversity. And that encouraged banks to have more women on boards. And I think that in Nigeria, there are approximately 4 women who are chairs of boards. So it was no longer just having them as directors, executive, or directors, whether executive or non-executive, but actually chairs. And that, I think, is probably the highest rate we have in the world, because we have approximately 24, large banks in Nigeria, 20-something. And I think it's amazing. We have more women as chairs than there are in the UK. I think UK probably not even one, and or maybe one, and the US maybe one as well. So the government has a role in this respect, working with industry. And also, you also have organizations like business schools, for example, who do a lot of surveys and let people know what is happening. So I think so that is in terms of externally. Now, if we look at organizations, what can they do? Plenty. I think a lot of information is out there, and people do understand that diversity leads to better results. The data is there. But how do you then do it? Very often you hear organizations saying, but there aren't very many women out there. And yes, when you look at the pipeline, you can have a dip in the pipeline. Women coming in at entry level, very often it might be close to equal, but as women move up, up through management, it's like a funnel effect, and it sort of narrows down until you get to the top. So what are the causes of this? You can work with it in several ways. some of the causes, are as follows, is that the organizations actually have been built and designed to suit the beginning of the industrial age. They are not built for today's world originally. And so we have a legacy problem. And what does that mean? Hundreds of years ago, organizations, when you look at the structure, they were built for men. So what you're actually doing is trying to change a structure that was never designed to really have working women. Okay. And so it's a cultural shift as well. Okay. But then we see certain organizations who are, making it happen. Goldman Sachs, for example, said that they wouldn't invest, they wouldn't IPO, they wouldn't bring to the market firms that didn't have at least one woman or member of the minority on the board. So if you have the economic power, you can make things happen as well. So these are the kinds of things. But many organizations and institutions, are doing quite well. Some of them say, so how do we find women? You find women when you go where women are. One thing I did in one of a workshop I led, which had men and women in the workshop, and I just said, look at if you had to hire a woman for a job, and you wanted to ask somebody, wanted to ask somebody, who would you ask to hire? In fact, actually, I don't think the question was yes, I don't think it was women. Just if you want to hire for this position, who would you ask? And put the names down. And when you looked at it, you actually found that for men, the people they would ask would normally be men on average. Compared to women, it's normally women. That is to say, our networks are gendered. We might not realize it right from school. They tend to be gendered. There's some people, if you were, a woman, you're an engineer, and you always had your networks, but they tend to be gendered. So if, especially for board positions where you tend to use networks, even if you do use recruitment agencies, but very often, it's a network. So if you ask somebody, the likelihood is that they would know people of that gender. So if you want a woman in position, ask women. Ask the women in your networks, and they will find out where these women are. And women very often, who are senior women, very often do not necessarily come into the limelight, because women tend to think traditionally that your work speaks for itself, okay? Which, in a sense, it's true, but at a certain level, people need to be aware of it as well, okay? So when you want to find the woman, ask a woman, and you'll find lots of women who are out there, right? So there are not enough women, perhaps even in the pipeline, but the women who are in the pipeline are not necessarily given the exposure to the kinds of jobs and positions. So let's start with the ones that we have, whilst we're working on pipeline and getting more women into the system.
Included. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I am obsessed with your answer, because it also brings another spin to light in those that have the economic power,
yes,
have a role to play. Those that have the cultural power, for example, like Lamido, kind of encouraging diversity in banks.
That's
they
right.
have a huge role to play. And then the gender, those gender-based groups, which we don't think too much about, but it's kind of like how it is that I'm definitely gonna know another woman that is good for this role, more likely than a man that would know another woman that is good for that role. And also what you highlighted about how the system has already been put in place to, and I use this word carefully to kind of support the patriarchy, which is how it all started, from the beginning. I know whenever that word comes out, people come out with knives and you're fighting. I'm not fighting. I'm just saying the truth. It's a system that is in place already. And it's now kind of doing, those that already have the power need to start doing more to shift it. And we as women need to also help, they're already in a space where we can help. We can pull other people to be included so that they can help, and it can just keep going and keep going and keep going. I really, really appreciate your answer. Really amazing. Thank you so much for that. Now, more on the part of women's network, right? So you mentioned about how women's network is important. And I know that for a fact, that you are a convener of these networks. You're a host and you speak at them, okay? So I know that for sure. And you also mentor, you coach, like Cartier, the Cartier Women's Initiative that you mentioned earlier.
That's right.
And all the other places where you coach. So I want you, because you already kind of talked about it, but I want you to kind of emphasize more, because also, again, what you wrote for Forbes, the 9 ways I'm sorry, I wrote this down. The 9 ways successful group networking empowers women in business.
Well
These
done.
different things.
Yeah.
So I want you to kind of talk more about mentorship, network,
Sure.
and getting women included more, if you can.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I think the whole conversation around network started from, when we talk about the old boys network, so it was about positions which were really limited, which were not out there in the open, and that men would give other men these opportunities.
Yes.
But I think that what was missing from that is understanding that we work as networks. The research has shown that I can't remember what the figures are, but it's even informal jobs that I think it's more than 50%. I can't remember the figure, of people get their jobs through networks. It's not that they're not qualified, but that's how networks work. Because within formal information, you can't get everything, all the information that you want. So we are social animals. We need to talk to people. We need to understand, more about people in the way that we can't always have the information transmitted through documents or, one interview, etc. So I think it was fairly normal. I mean, whoever was in business, would be in a network, and that's the way that you'd get information. So I think that it was normal, in a sense. But if women are being locked out of it as women, really women in the workforce is a relatively new phenomenon in the numbers, strangely enough. We forget that in 1965, in many countries in the West, women couldn't open a bank account without their husbands. 1965. In some countries, 1975. So it's still sort of fairly new, really in many ways. And I think, in the West, the World War did help. Some of these, so you have these sort of these issues where information passes through networks. So there was an important point about women need to be involved in networks. But the way networks have been done traditionally were not really suitable for women, because networking after hours or over drinks, women, by far the major responsibility to do with children, etc., just didn't work with women. But then what I think people have found is that networking, there are many different types of networking, and women are very social in the terms, our traditional role is we're creators of society. But that has been downplayed and undervalued for the simple reason was that there wasn't a monetary aspect of it. There wasn't an economic value in that, direct economic value. And when I say economic value, of course there was economic value, but in terms of translating them to a method of payment, it wasn't, right? However, so women create society, but now when women are coming into the workplace, what we're finding is that women are taking those values, bring them into the workforce, and that is creating value itself. So we work very well in terms of groups and networks for the same reason that anybody would. Information flows, we get to know people. And when you look at network analysis, it tells us this, that when we are within our groups, the same sort of information tends to float around. But then when we then move into other groups, right, and that is called the strength of weak ties. That's where new and real and important information starts spreading. So there is a lot of understanding since over the last sort of 20 years, the importance and the power of networks, and women are realizing that as well. And also, you also find that when you have professional networks, they are very much appreciated in our network, even though we do not work specifically on putting women on boards, but because people outside see that our network is of value. We've had instances where we asked, do you know women at certain levels, and we recommend women as well. And so women derive a lot from them in terms of information, support. We love being together with our own as well, being in a safe place, we share. So there's everything good about networks, for women, and there's a lot of recognition now all over the world about the power of networks as well. So there's a recognition as well for that.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's absolutely correct, and I absolutely agree with everyone. not run network, the type of conversations we would have, because we share common common challenges and common lifestyles. I mean, even though we're from different walks of life and different cultures, but the conversations we would have like common themes, you know, common ideas, common problems that we face, and so we're able to help each other like overcome them and just be better. So I absolutely agree on what you said. Also, I want to say a shout out to everyone that has been joining. I know we've been talking and we've been ignoring you guys today. I'm so sorry. It's just I have so many questions for the wonderful Dr. Anino Ewuwa, and we don't even have enough time because I think we have probably a few more minutes left, and I'm trying to decide what questions I need to ask. So I think I'm gonna skip some of the more serious questions for now.
Okay.
I'm gonna go a little bit to more interesting questions, and then we'll go back to even more educational questions as well, if we have the time. So the first one I'm going to ask is, this is just for me, would you ever run for a political office? Because I feel like you should, and I'm sure everyone here agrees with me. So,
well, I tell you the answer. You see, now it's become most unfashionable for you to say no, because when you say no, it's well, who's going to do the work, you know?
Right?
But that is my honest answer. I'll tell you this. When I was in university and I told you what I wanted to do, I knew that even when I was going to work in the banking world, I didn't want to have anything to do with government. I don't know why. That was just me. I wanted to work in the private sector, but I said, even in the private sector, you know, I didn't want to work in financial institutions, because in financial institutions, you'd have to work, you know, with the government, etc. But once you study economics, you know that, you know, private sector and public sector are intricately linked, you know. Yeah. So I know that. So, you know, in a role of, I can see, no, I don't agree.
Hi, J Network.
So,
okay, there's one person that does not agree. Cool.
So maybe advisory, but working in government. Somehow I'm sorry. I haven't finished my day job yet, and you know, I still have a lot to do and not much time left. So I think I'm more than busy with what I'm doing.
But if you ever decide to do it, though, I want to be a campaign manager, because I feel like I can make lots of noise for you. I'm like, do you know who she is? Do you know what she can do for you?
Thanks.
No worries. Thank you so much for that. I mean, again, we never know for sure. It could. I mean, it could happen. I'm hoping it does, honestly, because we need leaders like you, honestly. So this one is another question, more personal. I hope you don't mind. I know you do so much. I know you're doing 100 things and you're making so much impact. And I also know, and if you don't mind my saying, that you also have, of course, a personal life, and you're a mother of 2, if I'm correct?
I am, yes.
Yeah. How do you balance it all? And not just the personal life, but even everything you're doing. How do you keep a balance in between that?
I think this is an important question really for women. And I think that the long and short of the story is that there isn't one way. Because, you know, we all have different ways of doing things. It's finding the way that suits you. However, what it is that we do say, especially for women in business, is if you've read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, is that, you know, don't remove yourself, you know, from the running, from the competition. Don't remove yourself and say, you know, I can't do this because of A, B, and C. When you get there, you know, you'll find a solution. Okay. So, for example, women may choose certain roles in organizations because they feel that there might be less pressure there, etc., etc. No, I mean, things are changing. You know, you will find a solution when you get there, because if you're not in certain roles, in business roles, it's difficult to become the CEO, right? If you haven't had, you know, if you haven't had a business role, for example, okay? But, you know, some women seem as if they can do it all. That is perfectly fine. But most women can't do everything at the same time. Nobody can do everything at the same time. And in some research, I have a wonderful colleague who's done a lot of work. She's Irish and worked in France. I think she's now in Canada. Had done a lot of research in women in entrepreneurship and looking at how, you know, your life stage determines certain things. And one thing that, you know, I know I use the word competition, which, you know, I regret using, in the sense that, you know, it's not a race. You want to get there, but when you get there, I mean, have you ever seen a situation where you've had a man who's CEO and it's like, oh, well, on average, you got there at the age of 35, 40, 45, 50. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a race, it's just getting there. So there are certain stages, you know, in your life where, you might decide to take, a little bit of a slower role. But the point is, not to come out completely. For myself, for example, that's a time where, I did my doctorate, I went on board, I did different things, okay? So the thing about it is, look at it and see, what am I doing so I get plugged in? I'm always plugged in. One thing I always do was I always kept in touch with my mentors, who incidentally are all men, always, because I was in banking, I think, and even though I never counted at that stage the promotions, but that's the reality. And so make sure you're always plugged in, okay, into the business world, and make sure you know what's happening, make sure your skills are up to date if you take some time out, of the job market, but always keep an ear on the ground and keep in touch with colleagues of people. So I think that's it, is. So if you look at my life, there are stages where you do more, you do less, and I tell you, once children are grown up, you have all this energy, so much time.
This new energy, they're reborn.
Yes. So it's so I think, and also another thing, I remember speaking to a young lady who's doing very well, and we don't, when you're doing things, you do things hopefully, and you hope it benefits people. But I don't look at myself as a role model. But then I actually, at that stage, I realized, because she said to me, I just realized that she has her children, she's fantastic at what she's doing. And she goes, I just realized that I don't have to do everything and get it all done now. That you can do stuff later as well. And I think that is also the point. The point is getting there. It's not that you have to get there at a particular age or stage. It's just getting there.
Wow. And I feel like that advice is personal to me, because I'm one of those, like, I gotta get it, I gotta do it now. I have to be the youngest this, but I'm like, who are you doing it for though? Like, who is it for? So it's the balance. And one thing I'm going to take from this is that it's not a race. Stop running. Just take your time to get there.
Yes.
But get there.
Get there. Don't get there. Make sure you get there. Make sure you get there.
Make sure you get there, because it's important. That's the whole point. Because we have to get there so that we can help other women get there as well. Absolutely. Right? And other people as well, not just women, but everybody get there as well. Thank you guys so much for joining. KO Dunia says very true. I'm trying to see. Official Simi also says absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for being a part of this. My final question, because I want to give you enough time to get ready for your next session. I know I didn't talk to you about half of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, honestly. But just this final question, which is the African identity. I remember earlier on when we were starting, you said that one of your big goals is the development of a continent. I will not forget that. So as part of that continent, or being a person that is from that continent, what does the African identity mean to you? And to make it easy for you, just give me 3 words. Okay, so 3 words. You don't have to think too much about it. Just 3 words on what the African identity means for you.
Well, first of all, we don't have to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah. We
are who we are. So we don't have to defend, we don't have to justify, we just need to be who we are and just do our best. I think that's it, We don't have to justify.
No need to justify, okay.
Yes. And I think, when people see that confidence, even when we use the word identity, it's not a word that I often use. Because, when you're interacting with people, you are who you are and doing what you're doing. And people, I don't think of people reacting to me as, with any particular identity. It's who I am, what I'm doing, and, my job, my role, my personality, or my person, and not so much my identity. So just be the best of whoever it is you are, and forget about that, People will see that, it will shine through.
I like that, what's it called? I like that you said confidence. Be the best of who you are. So like the best version of myself, the best version of yourself, the best, because there's a reason why we're all here and we have something to give individually. And I'm assuming that, that's important, because if we're not ourselves, then we're just wasting our time. But anyways, thank you so much. She's gotten so many accolades, and one of them was actually, she was Libel's Person of the Year. Honestly, she was Libel's Person of the Year last year. And I mean, if you look, I just need you guys just take a minute, just take 1 minute and just go Google the name and you will just go down this rabbit hole of awesomeness and just excellence. That's all I'm going to say. Of Dr. Anino. Thank you so much for taking out the time. We have a question, but I promised that was the last question. I'm so sorry, Ishelua, that I won't be able to ask. And hopefully sometime in future we get to talk again, and then I get to bombard you with as many questions as I have.
Pleasure.
Thank you again. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Enjoy your next session. I hope I'll be able to join that as well. And just wishing you all the beautiful things. Guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the session. Please say a wonderful goodbye to our dear doctor. She's just amazing. And thank you again. Okay?
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Bye now. Have a wonderful weekend. Bon fête.
Oh, yeah. Today's Labor Day.
It is, yes.
But I feel like we've been on Labor Day for like 2 months now. so look-y. So I don't know. But yeah, we're going to enjoy today. Thank you guys again. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. God bless you.
Thank you all for joining us. Bye for now.
Hello guys, thank you guys for joining. You guys are amazing. Honestly, like I enjoyed today's session so much. Like I don't know, like I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and you guys learned as much as I did. I'm going to be taking everything and I'm going to be applying it to my life. Also, I know we were supposed to do a session earlier on with Mr. Leke Adeboye, Pastor Leke Adeboye. I know we're supposed to do one around 2 p.m. Pastor Leke Adeboye, which is senior pastor in Redeemed Church, actually one of the sons of Pastor Adeboye, the general overseer as well. But we were not able to do that. We had to reschedule that last minute, and that's why you guys didn't get any information on that. But we'll be letting you guys know when we reschedule that session. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much again. Looking forward to our next session. We'll probably be taking a break this weekend, so you guys get a break from all of this awesomeness. Yes, you're welcome. And enjoy today. Bon fête.